You're listening to Crud Talk, a ministry of 50 Shades of Grace. Everybody's got a story. I'm guessing like me, you've been hurt before. But what if I told you there was more to this life than being stuck in the hurt and sin of your past? Hey, we all have crud, but it's how we deal with it that makes all the difference.
Today's episode is brought to you by a generous sponsor like you. We thank you for your gift, which allows us to share hope and continue to help people deal with the crud in their lives. So thank you. Welcome, everybody, to Crud Talk. Thanks for joining me this week. How are you doing? So I'm going to jump right in because this is one of my most favorite topics of all time. I'm going to call this one the other S word. We got a sweet response when my hubby, Pastor Rick Bruner, joined me last time on the show. So thank you for all of you that mentioned how much you enjoyed that and what you were learning, what God was telling you. I really love that. So this is the other S word, and I'm talking about the fun one. I'm talking about sex. It's probably one of my all-time favorite things to talk about and to help people deal honestly with their crud. I guess you could say I have a passion about sex, no pun intended. In order to understand why the statement is totally okay for me to think and feel and even admit, you have to understand what Jesus saved me from. Those of you that know my story, you can kind of maybe get your brain around this, but maybe not. I was sexually tortured. I was abused, raped by a man that my birth mother dated for years, from the time I was 5 years old. The sexual acts were painful. It was psychologically damaging and cruel. I was forced to do unspeakable sex acts, sold to multiple men that raped and tortured me. If ever there was a person who would be against sex, you would think it would be me. You'd be wrong. Believers, I'm going to say this to you. We must take back the world's definition of what sex is and live out our faith in all areas of our lives, including our bedrooms. What I have been encouraged by is the number of men and women who I've known for years who are willing to say, we can do better. We want to do better. A strong marriage doesn't mean that it's free of issues. Oh my goodness. A strong marriage is one that will do whatever it takes to work through the issues in order to find forgiveness and peace and love. So listen to this. Ooh, this is a good one. I hope I don't cry tonight. Ooh. I just got done reading your article, Sex, It's What's Not Happening. And I had to tell you about my story. My husband and I are struggling. We don't fight. We don't yell. In fact, we live together, but we barely speak to each other unless it's to talk about bills or the kids' schedules. We're courteous to one another, but there's nothing intimate, ever. We have no life in our house. There's no passion, and there's never any sex. I used to try to talk to him, but he would always tell me that everything was fine and that all couples are like this. I finally couldn't take it anymore, and I talked to a friend, and she told me to read your blog. I have to say that I was shocked by how right you were. And I just want to say, what? Doesn't everybody think I'm right like all the time? Okay, yeah, right. That's funny. Okay. She says, it was so good, Sonia. It was like you were speaking right to me. There were so many truths that related to me and my husband. We never talk. There was absolutely no communication. It seems like he doesn't know what I need and I'm not telling him, so it's like, how would he ever know? I didn't want to hurt his feelings, and I wasn't sure if he even cared whether I like it or not. I was not abused, but I always felt ugly, so body image was always a struggle for me. And when we did have sex, it never felt good. He was rushed and didn't take his time. I felt very dissatisfied with it. It was like, is this all there is? So I began to avoid him. Thinking back, I'm sure he felt rejected by that. I felt like he wasn't in love with me. It felt like we were roommates. Pretty soon, he just ignored me. Do you have any idea how it feels to believe that your husband isn't into you? So I decided that I would try to talk to him one more time. At first, he was defensive. I was thinking this is not going to be good. Whatever I was saying wasn't coming out right. So I did the only thing I thought might help. I began to read your article to him, and something changed. I saw emotion. I saw hurt. I could see in his eyes that he was struggling, but there was also regret too, maybe even concern for me. I prayed that God would help me have the courage to keep going and tell him the truth. So I did. And once I did, then he felt that it was okay to open up. We talked like we've never talked before. It was like your words gave us permission to say the hard stuff. He told me that he knew something was wrong, but didn't know what to do and was feeling like he was going to lose me. So instead of doing something about it, he distanced himself so that I wouldn't hurt him. When I asked him, "Did you even care if you lost me?" He said, "Yes, woman. Yes, I care. What do you think I've been doing here all these years? I love you." I can't remember the last time he told me he loved me. Well, there were lots of tears and hugs, and we feel like a weight has been lifted off of us. Some of the things he shared were really hard to hear. Like you said, girls, you all need to listen and hear. And that was the truth for me. I had unreal expectations towards him, and he was always afraid he was blowing it. We found out some hard things. It turns out I don't know what I'm doing either, but also some sweet things too. He actually read the rest of part 2 and part 3 to me. Can you believe that? He asked me point blank what I wanted him to do more of, less of. Things I didn't even know he noticed about me. He shared many things about me that he loved. It was opening and really sensual. My heart was full, and he told me that I was the love of his life and that he wanted me to forgive him for hurting me and for not having the guts to do whatever it took to keep me and to make me feel cherished and protected. I was like, who is this man? Forgiveness was a big deal. Again, you were so on point with that. So I asked him to forgive me for not showing him love and affection and for withholding that from him out of anger and trying to control him. We have much more work to do. And we're in this together. We are committed to communicating and to telling each other what we need. And we are committed to having sex. I love that. We know that we need that. I know this is way too much info, but we've been hurting for way too long. So when he took my face in his hands and kissed me, I didn't tense up. I didn't pull away. And I knew that he meant it. We can't keep our hands off each other. It's amazing. I just didn't know it could be like this. He's even flirting with me. Sometimes it's lame, but I don't care. I'll take it for the rest of my life. Oh, I can't stop the tears. I know that God answered my prayers. Everything's changed. We can tell that God has worked in your life and your faith is inspiring us after all that you've been through. Because you speak honestly, Sonia, about marriage and sex in a way that makes us feel like we can make it work if we're willing to be open and honest. We both said it was no coincidence that we found your website. God wanted us to find you so we could get this worked out. I feel like he saved our marriage. Thank you. And all God's people said, amen. Is that cool or what? I have so much, oh my goodness, so much to say about this, but let me just jump in here and say, if you haven't read my article, it's called Sex, It's What's Not Happening. I'll post that on my website today. I need to probably repost that, but I encourage you to go to soniabruner.com, click on my blog, click on that article. So much info, and there's lots and lots of comments. Great resource to get you guys thinking and communicating about sex. You might not have struggles, but you know someone that does. It's not a know-all, cure-all, but it does open up the door to allow permission to communicate the things that have been hidden in our hearts. If our sex life isn't great, can we have the courage to ask why? So I've been doing this a long time, not only just working through my own issues from when I was a kid and even as an adult. I've worked through a lot of crud. Amen. There are 3 reasons why couples are not having sex. Number 1, it doesn't feel good. You think this should be a no-brainer, but sadly, this is the one that gets missed a whole bunch. I totally get it. Why would anyone want to have sex if it doesn't feel good? One size does not fit all. Let me explain what I mean by that. Every human being is different likes and dislikes, different points of pleasure. What feels good to one person doesn't to the other. Communication is intimacy. If you're not communicating, then you're guessing. Most people are horrible mind readers. We have to work with diligence in truth and love to communicate what we want. here's the thing. You and I, we need to trust God and trust our spouse to open ourselves up and to tell them what we need. Guys, a woman who feels loved, secure, safe, and pleasured will want to have sex. Trust me. God has made it that way. Girls, a man who feels loved, secure, safe, and pleasured will want to have sex with you. But if it has to feel good, that's just a fact. If sex doesn't feel good, if it's not pleasurable, then nobody is going to want to have sex. Okay, the next thing. 3 reasons why people are not having sex. Number one was doesn't feel good. Number 2 is poor body image. Woo! Ding, 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 ding. This toxic poison affects both men and women. I mean, let's face it. Most of us are not where we'd like to be in the area of physical fitness and body shape, weight, or even overall image. All of us have something that we don't like about our physical image or things that we'd like to change. But for some, there is something that goes way deeper. How sad that we've let unhealthy thoughts about ourselves inhibit or literally push away the one we love. Not to mention, you guys, when we constantly talk about ourselves negatively, our kids hear this and are driven to unhealthy views on body image and love and even marriage. If you don't like yourself, have the courage to ask why, and then be honest. Be honest with yourself and be honest with God. Have you withheld yourself from your spouse because of this? It's not okay. Do whatever you have to do to tell the truth, deal with the crud, and start living. Number 3, sexual sin or abuse. You don't have to look for long to understand the scope of sexual sin and abuse in this world. It's everywhere. This is not a new problem. Sexual sin and abuse has been around since the bite of the apple, and sin entered the world at our own hands. We wanted to call the shots. We wanted what we wanted, and that was all that mattered. And it's been that way ever since. I need to say this. Sexual sin and abuse is not a man's game. Women rape children. Women are addicted to pornography. They have affairs and have multiple sex partners with zero commitment. And women don't care as long as their needs are met. So let's just get this straight right from the get-go. Sexual sin and abuse is everybody's issue. Why do I say that? Because even if you haven't been sexually abused or hurt by someone or looked at pornography or raped someone or cheated on someone, you know someone who has. If you've been hurt sexually, get help. A relationship with Jesus, I'm just going to say, is a great start, a game changer for my life. And counseling for abuse is also a game changer. I hear from many people who have past sexual abuse in their lives, and I hear the pain of those that have committed sexual abuse, sexual sin, and are living with the consequences of their choices every single day. And here's the good news. It's the person who has the courage to deal with their crud that makes it through the pain and hurt from the past so that they can move on to a wonderful future full of love and trust and hopefully a healthy sexual relationship with their spouse. Like I said, that article is my highest read, viewed piece, however you say it, I've ever written. I'll make sure to post that soon, okay? So you all have that link. But now, let's talk about what we can do, all of us, right now. Number 1, I bet you're already chomping at the bit to say it. Communicate. Open your mouth and tell the truth. Our spouse is part of us. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Genesis 2:24. So withholding anything from our spouse is not okay. Communication is the key. If you have needs, desires, or struggles in your life and you don't share that with your spouse, you have deliberately withheld yourself from the one you claim to love. You're living a lie in the relationship by not being truthful with all things. Let me just say a side note here. I've had a lot of Christians talk about how men need sex. It's just so one-sided, right? Men need sex. And sometimes even if a woman doesn't want to have sex, she should just lie there and take it and let him get his needs met. I'm just going to jump in here and say that real quick because I literally had somebody message me this week about that. This is just my opinion here. I'm not a fan of the lie there and take it because he needs it mentality. I think it's bogus. You need it just as much as they do. It's a connection that has no equal. I think it's a lie and hurtful to your husband and to yourself. I think that God specifically said, don't lie to each other, for you have stripped off your old sinful nature and all its wicked deeds. That's Colossians 3:9. And whatever you do or say, do it as a representative of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father. That's Colossians 3:17. How would you feel to be lied to? It would be a betrayal and a hurt, and actually hurt our spouse's feelings if the other spouse faked anything. It's a lie. Oh, it's a lie. So I'm not a fan of that. Don't fake it. Use your words, communicate. The place to start is telling the truth about everything. Then God can begin to expose the darkness to light, clean it out, and he can begin to heal those places that have been in the dark. Communication, we have to be willing to always communicate no matter what. Y'all, I know how hard that is. I get it, especially if your spouse is the one that has hurt you and you've hurt each other. I get it. But asking for what we need and dealing with any and all crud that comes up as it happens is critical. We can't have intimacy without communication. That means talking it through, even when it's hard or potentially negative or hurtful. I get it. I know how hard that is, but we have to do it. Number 2, listen. Have the courage to ask the tough questions and then shut up and listen. Really hear their heart. No blame, no judgment, no excuses. Just listen. Close your mouth while they talk. Do not try to fix this. Sometimes when we've blown it, we feel so badly that we try to jump ahead and fix it before ever listening to the person that we've hurt. When someone is hurting, they need to be validated in how they're feeling. The way that we validate someone's feelings is we listen. Number 3, forgive. This is a biggie. We must be willing to forgive each other when we blow it. Notice I said when. As a person who has blown it too many times, I appreciate grace and forgiveness from Rick. I also have had to extend that grace and forgiveness when I've been hurt. Forgiveness doesn't say that what was done is okay, but holding on to the anger is not going to hurt anyone more than you. Why would you do that to yourself? And what if someone did that to you? I've learned that forgiveness means that you look at the hurt that was caused, that they did to you. You look at the pain that it caused you. Nobody wants to do that part because it's so painful, but you got to do it. You look at what that person did that hurt you, and then when you're ready, you release them from the debt that you think they owe you. Some of you have sexual sin or you've been hurt by someone, and the thought of giving yourself up to possibly getting hurt again almost paralyzes you. Jesus gets it. He gave everything and he got hurt. Sit on that for a minute. I hear from men and women almost every day that are hurting with loneliness, sexual sins, and sexual abuse in their past. And from many who say that they have no desire for sex within their marriages. Here's what I need to say. Every person that I've talked to who is struggling has crud in their life that they have not dealt with. Love, trust, intimacy, sex, romance, fun is all part of that experience. Because of sin, because of crud, they have not experienced sex in the way that God intended it to be. My heart is that people would be free of anything that holds them back from having the life that Jesus has planned for them. Sex is not the enemy. It's not even remotely a negative thing. It's the sin that messes it up. It's the crud that messes it up. Sex is intense, wonderful. It can even be sweet, but it should always be done God's way. And when it is done His way is mind-blowingly awesome. It's not a guy thing. It's not a do your duty thing. It's not a let's get this over with thing. It's a man and a woman who have committed their hearts and lives to each other thing. It's a God thing. He designed it. Don't let Satan make you think anything different. Satan is having a field day with empty, sexless marriages. Enough already. Sex should be one of the deepest connections you and your spouse have between the two of you. Never boring, always passionate, always with a heart that says, I trust you with everything, so I willingly give you everything. To me, y'all, there is nothing sexier than a man or a woman who wants to make their marriage the best it can be. When a husband or a wife wants to learn more about sex and what their spouse enjoys and is willing to do whatever it takes to make sex pleasurable and deeply intimate, it's just a beautiful picture of love. It's desiring more for the other than ourselves. But through God's grace, we reap the benefit of that pleasure too. It's truly precious. You're never too broken for Jesus to fix. Don't give up. Communicate. Deal with your crud. Ask for forgiveness. Let God change your heart and then watch what God can do. I know. I'm living proof. God can do anything. Whew, that was a workout, y'all. God can do anything. Give it to him. All the hurt, all the pain, all the mess ups that you've done, all the mistakes. Give Jesus your heart and watch what God can do. You can check out all kinds of information at SoniaBruner.com. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Sonia Bruner. This is Crud Talk. See you next time.